Hello friends. So we are again here this Sunday for another episode of Wild Wild Slide series, and this is the 16th episode, and almost 4 months. This is the fourth month now, and great to host so many amazing slide guitar players. So interesting and such a learning experience to hear their stories, their sounds, their music, their talent, their virtuosity, and so much has come up in these series so far. And I'm looking forward to tonight also, where I will be inviting Dave Cipriani from America, California, and he will soon join us. I'm waiting for more of you to come and join this live session. Let me check. Oh, great. So, Dave is ready to be called in, and I'm going to call him from USA, California. Let's see. Sending request. I hope he will join us soon. Sometimes the connection takes time. Let's see. Okay. He's having trouble connecting. So, but he will join soon. Dave is here with us. And till then, I'm just dabbling in Kirwani a bit. Okay. Yes. Finally, I can see you, Dave.
Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Well, maybe the microphone's working after all. Okay. Yeah, if you can hear me fine, then I won't use my headphones. But if you can't, then...
But your voice is little soft. I mean, not very strong.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes, very nice. Now it's
All right.
strong and clear. Very good.
Alrighty. Hello.
Hello, Dave.
How are you?
I welcome you to the series WWS Wild Wild Slide, episode 16, and you are most welcome to to be my guest here for this
Thank you so
amazing
much.
conversation we are going to have. Yes, yes, yes. Oh, you are ready to play? Then play, Dave. We'll talk later.
Oh, okay, sure. I'll play a little bit.
Yeah, it's early morning
You're
there,
gonna
so
laugh at me. I
yes.
got I got my time wrong. So you actually woke me up, which was fine. Um,
Oh, great, great, great,
so
great.
I had it off by an hour. I mean, I was about to wake up in 5 minutes anyway, but
Aha, great.
I'll play a little bit because it's so early.
Yes.
I was just been working on or dusting off some Jogia.
Ah, great, great, great. Please,
So
please, please, Dave. Wow, wow, wow. Yes. Wow. Your voice is gone, Dave. Yes, yes, yes. You're back.
modern technology. Um, let's see if this is better. Apologize, it's having to plug my phone in because even though it was
Hmm.
charged a little bit this morning. Hi, Joel. Even though it was charged this morning, it is saying that it wasn't charged. So, wait a second here. Quote personal here. Modern technology. That should fit. All right.
Yeah.
Apologize. What was that?
Great. Wow. Wow. Very, very nice.
Yeah. I don't know if you want me to play more or should I?
Play more, play more. You're sounding so
Oh, okay.
nice. It's
Okay,
so
wasn't sure how much.
beautiful. It's so magnetically nice.
Great, great.
Wow. Wow. क्या बात है? ये बात बहुत बढ़िया. Beautiful, Dave. You have made my day. I mean, whatever is left today. Played so beautiful. You so beautiful. Very, very nice.
Thank you
Very
so much.
nice. Very
Thank you for having
nice.
me here.
Very nice. So Dave, how did it all start? Why slide guitar in your life?
Yeah, it's a multi-tiered question, actually. Um, so I originally, I grew up playing guitar, just whatever popular stuff, and writing songs. And then
Mhm.
in undergraduate, I studied Western classical guitar, like Bach
Huh.
and Taraga and other staples of the Western classical guitar. And I
Mhm.
also studied
Mhm.
jazz.
Mhm.
And I did, just as a side mention, had the great benefit to study with famous jazz guitarist named Charlie Bird
Wow.
when I was in college. And
Mhm.
when I got out of college, I was actually had been over practicing and was having problems with my left hand. And
Okay.
so a friend of mine was like, "Hey, why don't you try playing slides?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, sure. It's a
Mhm.
good way to keep playing, right?"
Mhm.
And around the same time, other things. One was I was getting very serious about meditation
Oh,
um,
great.
and studying in the Shambhala Buddhist tradition. Actually, I was just beginning with Shambhala, but I'd been meditating for a couple of years on my own. And
Mhm.
I was also learning by ear the music of John Coltrane,
Mhm.
um, originally on regular guitar, and I should say particularly Love Supreme, and which if anybody, for some reason, any of the viewers right now have not listened to Love Supreme, you should listen to it. But not right
Mhm.
this second, though. And so I started playing in an open tuning on regular bottleneck slide,
Mhm.
trying to imitate John Coltrane.
Mhm.
And to
But
my
like this,
yes, in
not
that
horizontal.
yeah
Yes.
yeah
Okay.
where
Okay.
did
Okay.
I had another slide like this,
Yeah, yes.
and when I did it to my naive 20-something ear, it sounded like Indian music.
Oh.
So I became curious about Indian music because I'm like, why does this sound like Indian music? Um, and I started, I got some Ravi Shankar albums, and but I just started getting better at it. And then I met a very excellent sitarist named Jai Kishore, who was a student of Annapurna Devi's. He was actually just in his early 30s at that time, and he had just completed his studies with her. And so right when I seemed like I was interested or ready, he kind of showed up, and I stayed with him for about a year and a half. I wouldn't say I was particularly serious, but I progressed quickly because I already had previous year training and music experience. So,
In
within
California, all this in in US.
that was in Maryland, actually, in Maryland.
Where?
He lived in Maryland, near Baltimore.
Oh,
I
okay,
was
okay,
living,
okay. But in
yeah,
US.
so
Okay, okay.
in the U.S. Yeah, I was in the Baltimore region. And so he kind of exposed me. So I was just around 25, I think, and he was exposing me to Indian music for real for the first time. I'd seen Ravi Shankar in like Woodstock, and like I had this one Ravi Shankar album or two, and it was great. But he was, he exposed me to the forms. Like, he had this kind of interesting course where like you learned like a Volimbit, a Drut, and then an Alap in a couple of different rags. And so he was defining terms for me, and then he'd be like, "Here, check out this recording." And each week he would give me a new record. So this is back then; it was on cassette. So he'd give me a cassette of Ravi Shankar, cassette of Alayana Prasanna, cassette of Shiv Kumar Sharma, cassette of Call of the Valley, cassette
Yes,
of
yes.
ZM Dagar, Ashwini Bide. I think Ashwini was the only singer he gave me, interestingly. But so I studied with him, took a break because I was just really broke, and then a couple years later, and also when I met him, I should say I did not know that there was an Indian slide guitar tradition. None at all, because I'd never heard any of them. I think he was the one who told me about Braj Vishwan Kabra, and then after that, around that time, I found Devashish Bhattacharya, I found Vishwa Mohan Bhatt, and then more importantly for me, is I found a recording of Barun Kumar Paul.
Wow.
And when I found that recording, I was like, this is the guy I like the most. Because I felt he had all the virtuosity of all the other players, but the sweetness that I felt only Vishwan Kabra had. So he had that combination of different things. And so I had a recording or two of his, and then things kind of cleared up in my life, and I had an opportunity. Interesting little story. So I don't know if so there's this all-night music concert that they used to do in New York that Pandit Shamir Chatterjee used to organize. And I used to go to that. And the year I decided, I'm like, yeah, I think I could go to India now. I'm like ready money-wise, and my life was kind of settled enough at that point. And so I saw a flyer from Krishna Bhatt, the sitarist, and I was like, oh, he's doing a workshop in Jaipur. I'm gonna go. Awesome. And then after I got that flyer, and I had I guess I got the flyer, and then I saw that Barun Kumar Paul was doing a workshop in the United States in the Woodstock area.
Oh, wow.
And so I and I was friends with Steve Gorham, the Bansuri player. I've known him since the late '90s, and I called up there to find out if I could still go to the workshop, and Steve he directly called me back because he was one of the organizers, and he said, "Oh yeah, Dave, you can come on up, man. Do you need a place to stay? Yeah, come and stay in my house." And I was kind of like, "Wow, okay." So I had this I went up and went to this workshop with Barunji, went to the concert he gave that evening with Pandit Samir Chatterjee. And then I stayed at the same house. I didn't know it. He was staying at Steve Bourne's house also. So we got to hang out for dinner. The next morning, a student of his who's a sitarist gave us a little morning concert. So I was just in this, it was this just magical thing for me. I'd never
Yes.
encountered anything like this before. And then the next
Yes.
day, I got home. It was like a 5 hour drive to where Steve lived, from where I was living in
Mhm.
Baltimore. And I got home and I got an email back from Krishna Bhatt. And he said, "Oh yeah, of course you can come and study with me." So I gave him a call, and this is one of the introductions to Indian culture. I said, "Oh,
Mhm.
hi Krishna, how are you?" And I didn't say G or anything back then yet. And he's like, "How are you doing?" He's like, "How are you doing, Dave?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm doing great. I met Barun Kumar Paul and did this amazing workshop with them, and I literally got better just from attending the workshop, which is true. It was just kind of funny because I just went to this 3 hour workshop and my understanding just jumped just from that 3 hours. And
Yes, sure.
and I was like, yeah, and I stayed and I met Barun Kumar Paul and blah blah blah, and he said, "Oh, you should probably study with him, and not me."
Mm.
We have this thing in our music, when you meet the right teacher and you have that connection. And I was like,
Mm.
oh, okay. I was a little disappointed because I was all excited already. So I had to like try to find how to get in touch with Barun Paul. And
Mm.
I called Steve and then got his number and he said, "Oh yeah, yeah, you can come and study with me." Sure. And then to make a long story slightly shorter, I went to this was like in May, and I went to
Mm.
visit him the next January in
In India.
in India, in Delhi.
India.
So
Oh.
he was staying in I think he's still in the Delhi area, but he was staying at Sri Aurobindo Ashram, living there.
Okay.
He had just started living there for a period. He and his wife for about 5 or 6 years, maybe more. I can't
Mm.
remember exactly how long they lived there, but he had just moved there from Kolkata.
Mm.
And so I went there, and just he blew my mind, and I just kind of fell into practicing 12 hours a day while I was there. Um,
Oh, wow.
I just like that, I just didn't even. I was like, oh, cool, like wake up in the morning, meditate, and then start practicing. And he had a yoga
Super.
teacher that I met with. So he and I went 3 times, but
Mm.
that first one, of course, like it was interesting. I really only got to study with him for 3 weeks while I was there. But
Mm.
I came back and everybody was kind of like, "What just happened to you, man?" Like I was playing guitar very differently all of a sudden.
Mm.
So I went several times, and he brought I had this guitar made. Most people, hold up, good old Concord guitar.
Yes, yes,
You
yes,
know,
yes,
um,
yes.
and and I studied with him several years. And
Mm.
when he would come back to the States, I would study with him. I used to do a thing where he would he'd come to New York. I think I did this at least twice, and I would basically drive up to New York and do like a little practice retreat or riyaz, whatever you want to call it, with him for like a
Mm.
week. Stay at somebody's
Mm.
house and then go and
Mm.
study with them. I used to drive the people at my work crazy because I was always taking off time.
Mm.
So, so
Yeah.
that's the basically how I got involved with Indian slide guitar and with him, and
Mm.
then I moved to California after I studied with him and studied with Ustad Ashish Khan at CalArts,
Okay.
California Institute of the Arts.
Mm. Good to know. I didn't know that Varun Dada had traveled to US also before, and he had so many tours also in the West. I thought he
Yeah, he
mainly
had.
stayed in Kolkata.
Yeah, I forget exactly where he's as far as I know, he's still somewhere outside of Delhi. I mean, they were at the ashram for like 5 or 6 years, maybe more, and then
Mm.
moved somewhere, not far from Delhi. Um, but he was, leading a program. He would both like teach kids at the ashram because the ashram is like a
Mm.
school. Like there's the
Mm.
ashram and the people doing seva there, and then there's kids just from the area that go
Mm.
to school there, like K through kindergarten through like high
Mm.
school, all the way through high school. And so he was teaching there, and then he brought his senior students or uh, friends of Guru Bhai's, um, or students of Guru Bhai's, I guess, like on other instruments.
Mm.
So there was one of his senior students was an Indian slide guitar teacher teaching the kids. There was a Bansuri student there, Sujit Mandal, there was somebody, there were just other people that were studying with him there too. And then he'd have like an intensive like every year. I think he still does that. Like an
Great,
intense
great.
like
I
guru
mean,
pool.
hmm
Yeah,
but it's amazing to just know that you have been not only doing music but also meditation simultaneously, because I've always observed that music and meditation are like hands in glove. If you are that kind of person, then they will be both together one way or the other. And
right.
so you cannot separate them as such, because it becomes part of your breathing in a way. uh, that awareness, that undercurrent is always there when you play music. And if you are just meditating, then the silence is also so much musical in that sense, I would say. That they both go so well. And I'm so happy to know that you have been also in the same journey with like so many musicians, like I also, me and others also have been through, with music and meditation just intertwined together in such a way that both are helping each other and both are being practiced simultaneously. So very nice, very nice. And so you are still now pursuing slide guitar as infusion genre main, no?
Yeah, I mean, it's I do some straight classical performing. I mean, I do very little performing this year, but like occasional concerts. I used to do a lot more weddings actually at one point too.
Mm.
And then, but just straight classical concerts as well as fusion ones where either, and I think I was saying this to you when we talked the other day, like either it's fusion from the point of view that the other instruments are not Indian, but I'm basically playing Indian music, um,
Mm.
or it could be
Mm.
that the form that we're using is not Indian music, but the Indian phrasing will come out because I pull out my instrument.
Mm.
So I've done a few albums with. I have a band called Mahadev. From time to time, we haven't
Oh,
really been active, but
wow.
we haven't been active in like in about a year or two.
And
But
who are the members? Like, which instruments are you?
yeah, well, the it can vary, but actually, that's like only in the live performance, it's usually um, so myself on Indian slide guitar or
Mm.
classical guitar, sometimes on electric guitar.
Mm.
Um, so there's that bass player usually.
Mm.
There's
Mm.
usually saxophone and trumpet,
Mm.
and
Mm.
then percussion. And occasionally I can have a tabla player, but it's usually like I have like a Middle Eastern percussionist, and then
Mm.
another guy that I went to CalArts with who plays drums, African percussion, kanjira, a few other things,
Sounds very
Brazilian, Latin
interesting. Yes.
percussion. Yeah,
Mm.
it's the cool thing is, and I think I mentioned this when we were talking the other day, where like most of the guys that I played with in that band went to CalArts, and that's how I know them. And what's interesting about CalArts, for those of you who don't know about it, so CalArts has
Mm.
the first Indian music program in America that's part of an accredited program.
Mm.
So like Ravi Shankar actually started it back in the late '60s, early '70s,
Mm.
working with Walt Disney.
Oh.
Walt Disney founded the school, and but I mean, like he didn't really work with Walt Disney. It was just more like he got the call, and Walt Disney founded the school. But what
Mm.
happens is people from every discipline there will study Indian music or African music. So, like for example, one example, the sax player can sight read sargam, and just you put a sargam in front of him, he can play it. I can't even sight read sargam that well. I have to like memorize it first.
Mm.
And like the drummer who learned a little bit of tabla from Swapan Chowdhury and Randy
Mm.
Gloss, and he was teaching me how to use Indian syllables when I'm reading Western music, which was a
Mm.
very interesting thing. So that I
Mm.
could, because the Indian concept of rhythm is more straightforward. So it makes
Mm.
it, if you understand it, it's way easier to read it than it is if you're thinking one iana, two
Mm.
iana, three iana, four iana. So it was
Mm.
interesting little
Mm.
experience to learn about that
Mm.
stuff.
Mm.
So excuse me for talking so long.
Great, great, great. So play something from the fusion genre you are doing. Something, anything that would that you would
Yeah.
like to play?
Should I do something on my classical guitar, or should I do like a
Whichever
like
you are comfortable with, whichever you choose is
let's
fine.
see here. Let's see if I'm ready for this one. This is a tune of mine. I was also having to think about like which tunes can you hear the fusion aspect in possibly most. So this is
Mm.
a song that my band recorded on our last album. It's a interesting little
Mahadev, that band of yours, right?
Mahadev. Yeah, we recorded
Yeah,
that
great.
album about 4 years ago.
Okay,
I think
okay,
we released it
okay,
3 years
okay.
ago. And this
Mm.
one is called Kim's Limbs, and it's got a lot of different things in it. So I mean, maybe I'll break it down for the listeners before I play it.
Mm.
So it's influenced by the rock band Radiohead,
Mm.
who's one of the best rock bands around in the world, and that guy one of the guys even went and recorded in Rajasthan. Interestingly enough, we'll talk about that later. But
Mm.
it has a lot of Latin influence when we do it live. You won't hear that in me by myself because it just can't come out if it's just me. It's based very much on Balkan music, Eastern European
Mm.
music. I studied
Mm.
Macedonian and a little bit of
Mm.
Bulgarian stuff when as a Kellogg.
Yes, yes. Mm.
And then it has, of course, Indian music. And as I
Mm.
often tell people, whether or not it's obvious, there's usually some Indian music in something I'm doing.
Mm.
And so there's like a little too high at the end. And some of the way that I develop the phrases
Mm.
is based on some ideas from Indian music. Not all of it, but. So it's called Kim's Limbs. And here.
Mm. Wow.
kind of like
This
that.
is great piece, great piece.
Oh,
Very nice, Dave. Very nice.
thank you so much.
Oh, you are gone. Oh, no, no, okay.
Yeah, sorry, I knocked it over here.
You should. Aren't you thinking about releasing it digitally now, somewhere like on
That's already,
iTunes, other?
I mean, that one's available already on iTunes.
Is it? Okay, okay,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, it's and the cool thing, that album,
Hmm.
I'm very proud of it. I mean, it's a very interesting album. Very
Hmm.
diverse number of things on there. So that one, which doesn't have obvious Indian influence, but you heard the T-high there, and the way
Hmm.
that I develop the phrases is in the composition, um, would be from a lot of it's from the way that you rhythmically relate to stuff in Indian music. The first composition on there is based on Arta Jaital and Rag Bairagi, but it has like
Hmm.
funky drum kit and bass. And I got
Hmm.
a Kowali singer to send
Hmm.
me his vocals. And then there's several African influenced ones. There's one that's Afro. It's
Hmm.
the rhythm is based on African music on Afrobeat. It's very Fela Kuti sounding, but it's based on Rag Pilu. Um,
Hmm.
at least for the basic melody. I mean, there's the sax player and the trumpet take.
Hmm.
I think the trumpet takes a solo on there too. So I mean, those guys don't have any Indian influence in their solos, but yeah, and then there's even
No need to. No, they should be themselves.
well, those guys, yeah, no, well, and actually one guy can do it. There's a guy that I know, Dr. Neelamjeet Dhillon, who is
Hmm.
he's a very senior disciple of Zakir Hussain on tabla, and
Oh.
he came to
Hmm.
CalArts to get his originally master's degree, then his doctorate. But he's also
Oh.
an excellent sax player, like jazz
Oh.
saxophone. So saxophone.
Interesting.
He can also play bansuri and a few other instruments, but his
Hmm.
two main ones. And
Hmm.
one time we were performing with him on sax, not on tabla. Though he's like
Hmm.
one of the best tabla players I know. Um,
Hmm.
and he basically did this very, very long chakradar on saxophone that was
Oh.
obviously like sounded like a tabla composition.
Yes, yes, he might have played the tabla compositions in on. Yeah, many people do. Many people do.
Well, and it was interesting to hear that, I mean, it's a trend in the West, of course. I don't know, maybe in India too, for jazz musicians uh, of some stripe to learn Indian music. I mean, usually if it comes to them
Mm.
some natural way, like what's his name? Man, there's a sax player who has a South Indian background.
Ah, Kadri
Uh,
Gopal Nath.
no, that's a
Kadri?
different one. He's American Indian,
Okay,
uh,
okay, okay.
and I can't remember his last name. I want to say it's like Rupesh Mahadeva or something, but I don't think that's
Okay,
the
okay.
last name. And then there's
Mm.
a very famous jazz pianist named Vijay Iyer, who is Indian American, and there's so these guys that come to it naturally. You know,
Mm.
my friend Sheila Bringy, she's was raised in the West, but she grew up singing bhajans with her mother. And so it's interesting how these different
This is
things are coming together.
mm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Fusion is always full of surprises and full of, if done perfectly nicely in a very creative space, then so much amazing things can come out. Potential is so much there in this genre. I
Right.
always love this because so much is possible. East and west and north and south and all directions can meet musically and find some common grounds to play here and there, and sometimes go to their own corners and then also make some amazing sounds there and then come back together in some common grounds. And then it's a very interesting thing if done nicely, properly, and seriously, not frivolous. What is the word? Frivolously.
Frivolously, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
No, it's
So
true. Well, and I think there has to be, because I've heard, of course, like, was it Meeting by River, with Vishnu Mohan Bhatt and Rai Cooder. That was one of my first exposures, and I just loved it. And I think, it's not surprising if you know those artists, but especially Rai Cooder. I mean, he loves to like see what's
yes,
going
I.
on with the other
Mm,
musicians from around the world. I mean, he's done, you all these other projects too.
Mm.
Stuff with Ali Farcatore, Buena Vista Social Club, and
Social club.
that he understands like you need to have respect, and if possible knowledge too, but respect is number one. I mean, like just to be like, wow, this is amazing music. What can I do to honor?
Mm.
Actually, like even there's you probably know this album. I think it's Journey by Ali Akbar Khan. Do you know that one?
Yes. I heard about
And
it.
it's
Long time back.
basically
Yes.
it's basically fusion, but I'd say basically because it's way heavier on the Indian side, right? Where it's Ali Akbar
Yes.
Khan's compositions, but he had a Western musician, one of his students, help to make some Western arrangements, and there's like a string quartet and and
Mm.
other stuff like that, and
Mm.
a little bit of harmony. Like there's one of them that has like a chord. It's like based on Madhavanti, but it has a chord progression, and
Mm.
it's just gorgeous. I mean, like
Mm.
we just love it. So, but like that's was built on a lot of respect, and I think that's the
Mm.
thing. Not just done for
Yeah.
commercial,
Some
like whatever,
some
but it's just like,
musicians.
hey, we're here to
Yeah, yeah,
connect.
yeah. Some musicians are like naturally collaborators in their the way they are being brought up, or the way they have been doing. It's just in their nature to be collaborators,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
they are very best suited for these kind of genres where
yeah,
collaborations of all kinds can happen, and amazing magical stuff can also come out. Not always, but yes, many times, and potential is always there. And
yeah,
so yeah, it's a very, very amazingly creative field of music, where musicians from different cultures can come together and explore. And in that exploration, they also learn so much about themselves, their own culture, because it is all reflected back to the musician himself in some way or the other, because he gets it back in a different way, the same thing, with a different perspective, and say, wow, I didn't know this existed. Or and some shiny things in his own genre may sound little dim in some way, and sometimes the reverse, some forgotten kind of thing in your own main genre can sound fantastically amazing and center stage in fusion. This is all uh,
yeah. No,
strange.
I mean, like that's the thing that I mean for me, I've um, from the start, I think because I was relatively old when I went to India. I was like 31, 32, somewhere around there. So I'd already been doing music.
Mm-hmm.
Like when I met Barunji,
Mm-hmm.
with I'd already I'd released like a couple cassettes with one band, and then I was had finished one album and was waiting to release it when I met him. So the album was mostly finished. I had like one song left to do. So actually,
Mm-hmm.
like like I always did fusion. It just I was already working on stuff that didn't have direct Indian influence or was less obvious. I mean, there was even on some of that other stuff before I went to India, there was Indian influence, but it became way prominent after I went. Um, and it was just something I always did naturally, and just I even remember that when I studied with Jai, and I was just kind of fascinated by the different, even though I wasn't really very deep yet in the concept of rag. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
I was just fascinated with combining this different way of listening, different sounds.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember writing like a blues, like that was kind of
Mm-hmm.
Indian. I don't remember if I may or may not have heard like "Meeting by River" yet, but I honestly can't remember. But I remember writing a blues, and I've written a few blues tunes
Mm-hmm.
based on or influenced by Indian music, and it's just
Mm-hmm.
it just for me it was always like, well, what sounds interesting, what forms do and I kind of grew up listening to blues, or it's part of American culture. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
and so I just honestly, for me personally, also I didn't come from a musical background, um,
Mm-hmm.
so I um, my parents, they paid for my lessons, but they were never really interested in it, didn't have very cultured listening tastes, which may have been to my benefit because it made me super curious about music, like listen to from wherever. So
Hmm.
that never really stopped. So it was like, oh, okay, what is this? Let me get some Japanese music. What's that sound like? And, what's this music from? I mean, in some ways, like even blues music was like foreign to me at one point.
Hmm.
I'm like, what is this stuff they call blues? I don't want to have the blues. That
Hmm.
means being sad, but that's not what the music is. And
Hmm.
and then later on, I'm like, oh, let me check out this Indian music stuff. Let me check
Hmm.
out Middle Eastern stuff. Let me check out,
Hmm.
like all these different things. The two that kind of hit me the most, I would say, were Indian music, of course, and
Hmm.
then a good bit of African music because it just has a sense of freedom and joy that's unique
Hmm.
to it. So
Hmm.
um, I'm outside of just general Western music, and
Hmm. No,
so
that's
that
true.
was my
That's true.
journey.
That's true. And coming to the present times, let's say, which is we are all affected by this Corona thing so much. And what do you see of music industry, how it is going to be changing, like, or live scene, live gigs are one aspect, then other aspects of recording music and digital
Yeah,
marketing and all that is there. So, what is your take on all this? Because we are actively
yeah,
connected with this.
yeah. I'm curious what the scene is like in India. I mean, like it's even So I officially put out my first CD in 2003. And
Mm,
before that, I had released cassettes locally and just sold them at shows or something. And that was the first
mm,
thing that I had that was available more broadly was the album in 2003. And I did like a couple of small tours with. I used to have a band in Baltimore called Shatabdi Express, um, because that was the first train I ever took in India, and I just had my mind blown. And
mm,
but and I did like a couple of short little tours with that band, and the way that things have changed, honestly, it's been hard to keep up with. So
mm. That's
that people a lot of times don't do physical albums anymore. I mean, I don't
mm,
know what it's like in India, but like the way that the economy has been, where like you don't get offered that much for a gig. I should rephrase that. Like what I got offered 20, 25 years ago is the same I might get offered now for certain kinds of gigs. And that money went a lot further 25 years ago than it does now.
yeah,
And
true.
some of this is the American economy. I don't know how it compares with India, but um, that it's. I mean, I've been like thinking about it and trying to figure out like how to wrap my head around it, especially with the current we can't really perform that much, and especially like specialized stuff, and there's
Mm,
people doing like semi-bar gigs
mm,
in America, and they can distance for that, but concerty kind of stuff, not so much.
mm,
How's it going, or where it's going? It's interesting because on one hand, the technology is available to reach more people and to
mm,
record more professionally. I mean, I could probably record the stuff I have on my computer is comparable to what the Beatles had 50 years ago, or
mm,
actually better, significantly better.
mm, mm,
But how does that translate into making money? I mean, a lot of people are like moving to YouTube, and there are some people. I have a few people I know, and I've thought about this, is moving to the Patreon model. Do you know about that? So,
no.
Patreon, it's this, basically people sign up as a subscription to be a patron
Oh,
for you,
oh, okay,
right?
okay, okay. Yes,
So
yes, yes.
like, um,
Mm,
maybe like several hundred people are all giving like $15 a month, maybe more depending on what their level is,
mm,
and so that's some income and you produce content. So, for example, there's a
mm,
famous jazz guitarist that I've joined his Patreon page, and it's like 10, if it might even be $10 a month. I don't even know. And as part of that,
mm,
he'll send out like free video of workshop, He's released like 2 albums this year that he just recorded while in quarantine, or like were from a live performance before the quarantine.
Mm,
We get it first. So that's one model. I mean,
mm,
I've thought about it many times because like think about how the masters in Indian music used to do it before partition, like they were
mm.
royal musician, the
So
for
the
the Maharaj of
patronage,
Jodhpur.
yeah, 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 yeah. The
You
patronage
know,
has become Patreon now.
that's one model, like I know a
Mm,
woman that went to Cal Arts that's doing that, and I know this guy and I know a few other people personally. Um,
mm.
I think for certain kinds of things that can be a way to hold it over. Um, obviously like some live performance coming back, but I don't think it's going to really come back for at least a year probably.
Yes, true. Uh,
Um,
I always, mm,
yeah, go
yeah,
ahead.
I always thought in olden times, or not very olden times, but like let us say 20 years ago or something, to make CD an album was very difficult, relatively. But money could come out of it because it was physical and people had to buy it and then physically play it and take it here and there or whatever. Money, you can see the money coming or going or whatever physically also. So it made
Right.
some different kind of sense there. But nowadays it's very easy to make albums like this. You can make every month an amazing album, but money, no, it's so difficult because millions of musicians are doing it all together and they are pouring
Yeah.
tracks after tracks. Every minute, some track is being uploaded somewhere
Yeah.
in some whatever, and then who are who are going to listen all of this music to be able to then play. Then you then have to make certain digital gimmicks, or you have to give money to some playlist people so that you are featured somehow or heard somehow, or then you get subscribers and viewers. This is a
Right.
different ball game. And
It is. I mean, it's an interesting one to think about too. I mean, think about just the way that, I mean, of course, like in India, there was this royal patronage model that fell apart after partition. And then, Ravi Shankar and that generation were the first one that had to do concerts to make their living.
mm,
And, the West followed a similar thing, but it already went through that like years ago. Bach and Mozart had royal patrons also. And
mm,
Beethoven was the first one not to be in that system. And he was able to
mm,
bring it to the people because he owned copyrights. And like even that stuff is
mm,
getting looser now. And also
mm.
what about music that like Indian classical music, of course, and jazz like are dependent on performance, not recordings.
Yes,
I mean, so yeah,
yes,
it's
true.
great that we have like 50 different recordings of Hari Prasad Chaurasia or something, which is
Mm,
awesome, or Nikhil Banerjee, all these recordings, especially now with
yes.
YouTube, like last night, like I remember a couple of years ago, I was looking for a recording of Darbari of Nikhil Banerjee, and I couldn't find anything good. The one I found was like a wobbly tape, so it's like, I'm like, is that his
Mm,
shruti or is that the tape? I can't tell. But like,
mm,
but now, like last night, there was an excellent recording of Darbari of Nikhil Banerjee on YouTube,
mm,
you know,
mm,
or I found all these recordings of Bridge Vishal Karma that somebody's been releasing, or
yes,
Varunji,
yes.
Varun Kumar Paul, that none of those were
Mm,
available um,
yes, yes.
10 years ago,
Mm.
and
Yes.
it's an interesting little thing, how do
Yeah,
we
there are positives and negatives for everything, like
exactly,
advantages and disadvantages. Always there's something is gained, something is lost, and this is how life goes on.
yeah,
So yeah, it's a very speculative kind of phase right now where we actually don't know what can happen, may happen, or will happen.
right,
And but musicians and artists of all sorts are they know intuitively that they have to be ready for changes now. Whatever type of changes they may be, pleasant, unpleasant, good, bad,
right,
but changes are imminent now, and changes not only the way they are performing or giving the product out, but also the way the music is perceived
Right.
is massively changing underneath, and so much is happening which will come out when all will be normal one day, and then then the same musicians will go out
Right.
normally, like, and this phase would be almost forgotten, and then whatever has happened in this phase would come out distinctively at that time, because that will be the time to bring it out. In fact, I'm seeing a sea change in Indian classical music too. The music itself, not how it is being performed in the industry and all
Uh,
the organizing and all that, but the music itself, the classical music. I'm sure, 100% sure, because who will bring about the change? The musicians, and musicians are changing. Their
right.
perceptions are changing, so definitely they will be playing a changed variation or some subtleties. It will start with
What?
subtleties, but then it will go deeper.
How would you describe the changes that you're seeing? This is one that fascinated me
uh,
because of coming from Western music, which has valued almost in a very negative way change. Where it's like sometimes it changes so fast. Or they want to
mm,
like what we have to go to the new change, and they leave stuff off all the time. But Indian music, which has values change less. I mean, obviously there's change, but and this is a strength, or that it's not always about throwing out what we did. Oh, that's what they did 20 years ago. We don't do that anymore. That's what they do in Western music, but Indian music, it's not that way. So I'm always
because
fascinated to find out about how how does it change? In what ways has it changed? Obviously, we know a little bit about Ravi Shankar and Alec Barkhan bringing like Sawal Jabab and certain kinds of things, like raising up the tabla. But what other ways do you see it changing?
first of all, the changes would be in the way it is perceived itself. I mean,
Mm,
Yaman will not change. Like, the Yaman will remain Yaman, the Jogya will remain Jogya, and all that. The modalities will remain. I'm not
mm,
saying the changes in modalities will be there, but the Yaman may be perceived differently by the new generation. They are already changed the way they are playing. Let us say any ragas now,
mm.
any raga, the presentation is slowly changing, slowly. Uh, and the generation of the next generation musicians are way more talented, way sharper, way smarter, and intelligent, also creative. Also, they perceive and understand things like a snap of fingers, almost,
Right,
many a times.
right,
And but of course, the real maturity takes time to come, and that will happen also by the course of time. They know it also. This thing also they know.
right.
So this is a generation which is already bringing changes without, even if Corona was not there itself, then
Yeah,
still the changes would have come up. So I'm not saying modalities would change overnight or something, but the
right, right.
way the musicians are perceiving, the way they are, maybe the pace, the whatever in way, I mean, it will be musician to musician also. It cannot be
Yeah,
generalized as such,
yeah, yeah.
but the frequencies would be felt. I'm sure. I'm 100% sure.
Sometimes I've wondered with Indian music, and this might be a conversation I have with somebody else too. So in
Mm,
Western music, there's often been this thing of like um, the music gets more and more complex, and then it reaches a breaking point where people are like, all right, we're tired of that,
yes, true.
and then they simplify it, and then it happens again and again. So, for example,
Mm,
like when it reached Bach,
mm,
he was the kind of the epitome, the nadir of like the complexity of Baroque music. The guy
mm,
was like the most brilliant improviser in Europe, and then after that, people are like, yeah, we need to like make that's just like so heavy and ponderous, and they simplified it, and then Mozart came along, and his stuff is relatively simple from a certain point of
mm,
view compared to Bach. And then
mm,
Beethoven came along, and then Chopin, and it started getting more complex
mm,
again. And then
mm.
some people are like, "Oh my God, you're just making a bunch of noise. Let's do something simpler again." And so you have like Satie and maybe Debussy. and then and it goes and it did the same thing in jazz too. It's like let's make bebop, and then it's like really confusing. Nobody wants to listen to bebop, so like let's do something simple, soul jazz, which is two chord changes. And I've wondered sometimes if Indian music will follow some similar thing. Like everyone's like, oh, how big of a chakradar can we do? And how fast can we play, and all this kind of other stuff. And then people are like, what if we just play beautiful music? Let's not worry about that. I mean, obviously, like, there's still the virtuosos, and we need that. But I've always wondered if that might be a similar trajectory.
Definitely. So, yes, let the changes happen and take its own own
Yeah, right.
way they want to be there, because yes, changes, even if no corona or whatever, they would have happened anyway, because every generation will bring something fresh, and the fresh thing, if to take place, then the old, something of the old must also go to make space for the new. And this is the life, whether we like it or not. And if it wasn't like this, then the classical music which we are seeing right now would have not be there too. We would have been stuck in 500 years of the same music and not grown at all from there.
One thing that I have noticed in Indian music, or actually in a lot of different musics, is sort of like maybe one style goes down, but it doesn't go away. So for example, like in Indian music, we have Drupad, which never went away, and it almost died out, but then the Dagar brothers and Gudecha brothers brought it back. And then now you have Bahauddin Dagar, doing Kirvani, which, of course, that's a South Indian rock originally. Like, okay, so on one hand, we're maintaining an older style, but we're still responding to more recent stuff. And I've noticed that in certain parts of the jazz community or Western music communities too. It's like, yeah, they don't play this style anymore, but then maybe they touch it again, but with a little bit of like more reflection of what they've been listening to more recently, so that it kind of cross fertilizes, pollinates.
Yes. Changes are eminent and they should be there, because otherwise there's no how will we grow, and the music will grow, and the genres will expand or disappear, whatever, like species appear and disappear, whatever what we say about the genres and all that. But anyway, shall we play something now?
Sure. We talked about Kirvani, and I'm gonna play my classical guitar. Is that right? Or should I play my Indian guitar?
Either way, so a minute or so you play this one, and then you can go to that, because you played so nice Jogia. Great.
Yeah.
Good fun.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny actually. I can't remember the last time I actually had played when somebody else was doing the Indian slide guitar. Usually it's me. So, um, and then it's actually great fun to be able to pull what I know from Western music and you know and from Indian music
Yes.
right there, and be able to pull a few phrases out from Kirvani and stuff like that. So.
Yes. Kirwani is such a nice, beautiful scale. It has everything for everyone, I think.
It
It
does, yeah. I mean,
has,
it's
yeah,
super,
yeah, yeah.
it's definitely one of the more uh, flexible or fusion worthy draws.
Yes.
Like you would not want to do like Hamir.
No, 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 no,
You
no.
know, uh, trying to think of a few other ones that you would not want to
Easy
do.
flowing scales can be tried. Easy flowing without
Yeah,
much of rules there, and
yeah,
then because that's the freedom to move is more there than
yeah,
and
yeah.
then yeah, yeah, definitely. So great, Dave. It was really, really nice having you
Thanks
on
so
this
much.
episode of Wild White Slide. I really enjoyed listening to your music, your stories, and your views about slide and the music and everything. So I wish you all the best and hope we can meet physically someday and do something together.
Yeah, that would be a lot of fun.
Could be,
Definitely at some
yes. Why
point.
not? Yes, yes, yes. So take care.
Yeah.
All the best. All the best to you.
Thank you so much for having me on here. Really appreciate it.
Yes.
It was a
God
pleasure.
bless you. Yes, dear. Bye,
Take
bye, bye,
care.
bye, bye.